Larry, thanks for coming back on. Let me start off with a simple question, and I think I know how you're going to answer it, but maybe I'm wrong. Is the Gaza deal proposed by Trump was it DOA from the start?
Yes. Yeah. This is, and we've learned a little bit more about it since it was announced. Initially, it was presented as, oh man, the Arabs have signed off on this, and this is a great deal, and intimating that there would be a two-state, the Arab countries said that they, had to be a two-state solution at the heart of it. Well, Netanyahu forever, but most recently in his address to the UN, reiterated there are two ways we'll have a two-state solution with the Palestinians. There's no way, and there's no way in hell. So now that we got that cleared up, that means the foundation for this agreement is bogus. This is all about, I think, it's a continued plan of Trump catering to his son-in-law Jared Kushner, who wants to rid the land of the Palestinians and build some oceanfront condos and have a real estate property development and, you know, make some money off of it. It has nothing to do about solving the genocide that the Israelis are inflicting on the Palestinian people. So then we found out that Trump, when he met with the Arab delegations at the UN.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group, with Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. Vaulted is offering all of my listeners $50 of free gold when you click on my sign up link. They have a tool called Vault Plan that allows you to passively add your gold position every month. Just activate it for 6 months and you will get $50 of free gold in your account. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike.
He told them one thing about the agreement, but then when he got to Netanyahu, basically he reversed himself on several of the things he told the Gulf Arabs. So like I said, this it's going to be, it's not, it will never be implemented.
So, a couple of questions that people have asked me that I'm gonna share with you. One is, why are not any of the other neighboring countries helping Gaza or the Palestinians through all this?
Why should they? I mean, um, the underlying that question is sort of and it's not, this isn't directed at you, but underlying that is the premise that the Palestinians are somehow just interlopers, that they're people from like Egypt and from Jordan, and why don't they just go the hell back home and leave the Israelis alone? Well, just go back and look at it in terms of actual census. In 2022, they conducted a census, the British authorities, because they had basically this area that we now call Israel, Palestine, Jordan, parts of Lebanon. All of that had previously been under the control of the Ottoman Empire, and with the loss, Turkey's loss in World War One, and Britain took over territory that the Turks had previously claimed control of. And in that census, there were like 720,000 Palestinians and 70,000 Jews. That was 1922. 1931, they did another census. And by then, the number of Jews in country had doubled. The Palestinians had still increased. They still accounted for roughly 70% of the population there. Well, why did it double? The end of World War II, the Great Depression sweeping Europe, pogroms in the former, what was then the Soviet Union, the newly formed Soviet Union, and the beginning of the immigration of a number of Jews to Israel out of, say, Ukraine, Poland, Romania, the areas we know today. Well, then another census wasn't done until I think like 1967. Well, by then, the number of Jews had jumped. It was in the millions. I think it was like 5 million in 67. Well, they're all immigrants. They didn't come from there. They are outsiders. They're Europeans primarily, but some came from North Africa. They got the differentiation between what they call the Mizrahi and the Ashkenazi. But the fact of the matter is, you had a substantial Palestinian Muslim and Palestinian Christian communities there. So this was their land. So there was no natural affinity. They weren't Egyptian. And so why should Egypt care? Jordan, on the other hand, was carved out in the same way. But Jordan already is hosting literally millions of Palestinians. So this notion that these other countries ought to get into the fight, I totally reject the concept that, Hamas is just a terrorist organization. Yeah, they're a terrorist organization in the same way that John Adams was a terrorist. Thomas Jefferson was a terrorist. Yeah, the Hamas is motivated by an Islamic theology, but at the root of what they're motivated by is this is our land. Our ancestors lived here. Our ancestors were born here, and we have a right to defend ourselves. It's really more, more akin to what my ancestors did to the Native Americans who inhabited this land. We just went in and took it over, killed them if necessary, forced them out, and that's what's taking place right now. So to suggest that, well, because the other Arab states aren't coming to their defense, therefore the Palestinian claims are not valid. No, I think that's silly. Just because most of the other Gulf states are nothing but high-paid prostitutes. You get with a high-paid prostitute, if you're looking for romance, this is not a Julia Roberts, Richard Gere movie.
What happens now there?
I actually think that Israel is going to experience a major political and economic and military crisis. And it is right now they're showing that despite all of their military power, they are struggling to gain control of Gaza City, number one. And they are suffering casualties in the process. They are overextended by putting military forces into both Lebanon and Syria, as well as trying to take control of the West Bank. Again, it'd be one thing if Israel was had a population of 90 million, they might be able to pull that off. They're roughly 7 million now, with all the immigration. So they have very limited, finite resources. I think the critical factor will be, are they going to follow through on their crazy threats to attack Iran again? If they do, I think that could potentially be the end of Israel, because Iran's got ample supplies of ballistic and supersonic and hypersonic missiles that will overwhelm Israeli air defenses and leave Israel completely vulnerable.
You have to assume that they know this. Do they not care to even, attempt to do this again with Iran?
Well, they don't know that. No, listen, Iran is decimated. Iran is weak. Iran is on the verge, its economy is on the verge of collapse. Once you construct that narrative in your mind, then all the others, all we got to do is just push a little bit and it's going to collapse and crumble. It's the same thing that Donald Trump and the nitwits around him, including J.D. Vance, are saying with respect to Ukraine and Russia. They create a narrative that is completely divorced from the reality on the ground. But because they believe it, they then act on it. It'd be like if I convinced you that I'm gonna attach some look like kites to each of your arms, and I'm gonna tell you, Mike, if you just flap furiously, I'm gonna push you off this 30-story building. flap furiously and you're going to fly, man. And you believe that. And then when you act on it, as you're flapping away and crashing into the ground because gravity's taken over and you didn't have enough aerodynamic material to let you soar through the air, doesn't matter, regardless of what you believed, there are facts about the world that your belief doesn't change. And that's what we're seeing right now with respect to Israel believes that the Palestinians are not even human beings, that they must be erased. I am frankly stunned and amazed that the Palestinians have been able to survive under these conditions for 2 years. But it's creating a burden. I don't want to say more of a burden. It's creating a burden on Israel. This is not a free ticket to commit genocide. You're seeing a rise in suicides. You're seeing reservists refusing to serve. Tourism industry is dead. The economy is just on fumes. So, if you want to sit back and say, "Oh yeah, Israel's got a bright future," it would only have a bright future if all the other countries in the region came together and said, "You know what? We think Israel's great, but look at what's happening here in the United States. The public opinion about Israel and its interference in American politics and its racism it's turning against them." And we saw the other day that Bibi Netanyahu admitted that they're paying Americans money to influence public opinion. That's a violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. He's interfering and meddling in American politics. And on top of it, they're making threats against Americans like Megyn Kelly, like Tucker Carlson, and like Candace Owens. The mistake they're making, though, is none of those three are in a position where they're being financially held hostage by some boss or some corporation. They've got what Sam Adams had, and he was the analyst that was telling the U.S. military they were wrong about the body count in Vietnam. He had fuck you money. He came from a wealthy family. And, I think that's what we're seeing with Candace, Tucker, and Megyn. They too have fuck you money. And so these Zionist thugs can only do so much. And I think it's going to blow back up on them.
With that, I mean, it appears that Netanyahu is desperate. He was doing this massive media campaign where he was going on all these shows in order to garner some support because the public opinion is so bad in this country.
Well, it has, and more and more information is coming out that makes Israel the Zionist prime suspects in the murder of Charlie Kirk. And people go, "Oh, how do you say that?" Well, actually, I've got there's a cartoonist named Nemo who sends me his material.
And is that the show you go on, Nemo, or different Nemo?
No, that's Nema.
Oh.
The other one's Nema. This one's Nemo, sort of like out of the what movie am I thinking?
Finding Nemo.
Yeah. No, not Finding Nemo. The God, getting old is bad when you start blanking out on it. The red pill movie, the blue pill movie.
Oh, Matrix.
Matrix. There we go. Thank you. They are. Nemo put this cartoon up that has a caricature of Bibi Netanyahu and we didn't kill Charlie Kirk because we're too busy killing, and listed all the other countries and people that they're attacking. And there's some truth to that, but there is, irrefutable evidence now that Charlie Kirk was starting to turn away. people accuse him of, like people like Ryan Dawson. I really like Ryan, but I think Ryan is, let's take some of this way too personal, and he accuses Kirk of being nothing but a grifter. He may have, you know, early on, but probably by virtue of his youth, succumbed to the temptations of all these millions of dollars being tossed at him. But it appears he really did he was genuine in some of his beliefs, and he was also open to changing his mind. And I look at the fact that he brought both Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, and Dave Smith to to that to that convention in Tampa in July, and having them there was basically a thumb in the eye of the Zionists. And then after that, he came under intense pressure. Hey, you can't, cut your relationship with these people. Don't have them back. And he said no. And apparently, he had informed. We've now learned in the last day, and learned yesterday, that 2 days before his murder, he was telling these Zionist supporters, I can't keep doing this. We're done. And then he winds up 2 days later. Coincidence? Oh, maybe. But you always have to come back. This was a deliberately planned assassination. This was not some lone nut gunman. And I guarantee you it was not Tyler Robinson. I think he's being held illegally and unfairly. Now, maybe he was involved with the conspiracy. I can't rule that out. I don't, but we still don't know if he was up on the roof. What we have now seen is, they released that still image of some guy, that looked like Tyler, but we never got a full-on face picture, and walking up the stairs, and you can see, the theory was he's carrying a backpack. You don't see a rifle out of the backpack. If he was carrying, well, he was alleged to have used this German Mauser rifle that shoots 30-06 rounds. There's no way in hell that you could fit that that rifle into the backpack. So the theory was, he had it down his pant leg. Well, you can see him bending both his right leg and his left leg. If you've got a rifle down your pant leg, you're walking stiff-legged with that leg. You cannot bend it. So they're lying about the weapon. So this whole thing surrounding Kirk comes back to this heinous interference of these Zionists in American politics. And it's not the first time that the Zionists have been implicated in an assassination here in the United States. The first one was with John F. Kennedy. And there is ample evidence. Where's my book? I forget. I've got it electronically. But ample evidence that the hit on JFK came down in part by the efforts of his administration, particularly his brother, to compel the Zionist Organization of America to register as a foreign agent. And they absolutely should. But, I really encourage, if people haven't watched Tucker's latest, he ultimately interviews Jeffrey Sachs, but Tucker spends really about the first 25 minutes discussing this whole issue of why is it that the United States is being held hostage by a tiny country of 7-8 million people, and that it is impossible to talk about it and have an adult discussion without being accused of being an anti-Semite. It's brilliant stuff by Tucker.
Yeah, I haven't watched the documentary yet. I plan to, but you bring up Ryan Dawson, Nick Fuentes, and I think Ian Carroll was another one that said it wasn't Israel. And I thought to myself, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and it's like, did they get checks? Did they all get checks cut to them?
Yeah, well, did Ian Carroll say it wasn't Israel?
I could be wrong about him.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure. Nick Fuentes, what do you expect from that kid? I mean, it amazes me that he even gets an audience.
His
I
audience is
mean, what has he
huge.
done? Huh?
His audience is huge.
Yeah. And it's like, what has he done? I mean, he has no experience really in the real world other than, you know, offering opinions and sitting around and, being a very talented bullshitter. But, you know,
But he's
and
but he's always been so critical of Israel. So is Ryan Dawson. That's why it kind of makes you wonder. You're just like, I mean, I don't know, but you're just like,
well, I wasn't familiar. Did Ryan say it wasn't Israel?
yeah, because he had said he's like, I rarely agree with Nick Fuentes, but yeah, his stance was maybe it's changed, but initially it was not Israel.
Hmm. Well, this whoever is the evidence I see tells me that there was uh, an organization behind this that is the kind of organization you'd see with a nation's intelligence service. Uh, I don't think it was Russia or China. I can make a case why it could be Israel. I can make a case why it could be Ukraine. And then you've got to wonder, what the hell is the Trump administration doing? I mean, Kash Patel he's just a clown I held out high hopes for him. I thought he was a legitimate deal. Yeah, it turns out I guess he's bought and paid for by Israel as well. Um, Go ahead.
Well, and what kind of planning would go into something like that? I mean, how much preparation, how much time prior to the day of it being, carried out would you need for something?
Yeah, potentially a week.
Oh, you could do it that
Okay.
quick?
Huh?
You could do it that quick in a week?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what you have to do is, first of all, understand, okay, where's Charlie going to be sitting? What's the plan? Was he going to be sitting here? Is he going to be moving here? You got to come up with a idea, where do you want to target him, number one. Once you target him, then you have to go recon the site to figure out where can I be where I can make this shot? And what are the chances that I will be discovered or observed? And then what's the distance? Because you got to know the distance so that your rifle is properly zeroed so that you can make the shot. So that's what I mean that this wasn't just, Tyler Robinson waking up in the morning and go, God, I hate Charlie Kirk because he said bad things about my footed transgender or confused partner. I'm going to go kill him. And just, I grab Grandpa's rifle and a couple of slugs of ammunition, and off we go. And, yeah, that looks like a good spot. I'm going to climb up on that roof and I'll shoot him from there. That didn't happen. I said this was planned out, which also means someone had information from inside Turning Point USA. Now, um, who could that have been? I don't know, but clearly someone who knew what the setup arrangement was going to be, and the schedule, etc. All of that went into prior planning. Then, also, what's the escape plan? So, what I see happened here is part of the escape plan was to create a number of distractions and confusions, such as that old guy Zen who says, I did it, doesn't have a gun in his hand, but all of a sudden that's where police are focused. You put somebody up on the roof that was seen, they've got a film of this body running across the roof, and then you see the jumping down off the back. Um, uh, Chris Martenson has done some great work um, laying out the videos. And what he shows is that he's able to show, one, you watch the reaction of the crowd. Um, it looks, it's sort of like if you've been to a sporting event where people do the wave, they stand up and it creates a wave going around the stadium. That's sort of what it looked like in this case. The wave started as you're looking at the crowd from the left side and it went across to the right side. That tells you where the shot came from. The shot came from the left. That's number one. Number two, you can tell when the shot takes place and when this body first gets up. And let's put it this way, if that person on that roof had actually had the gun, and that was the gun that, and that's where the shot was fired from, there's no way they could have gotten up and moved that fast. So they were up there for some reason to be a distraction. Once they heard the gunshot, then their job was to take off running to create an alter. Oh, looky there, just like a magician. Look over here while they're doing the magic with the other hand. So this is an organized effort, and the entire FBI story is pure, unadulterated crap.
One of my observations so far with this, first of all, the memorial. I live in Phoenix, and people were camped out the night before. It was at the Cardinal Stadium, and I didn't watch the whole thing. I was actually in Ohio, so I wasn't even here for it. But seeing the clips and just the what was it? I can't blanking out that when Erica came out with the hydro, what do you call that? The explosion? I can't even think of the word right now. The like a rock concert.
Yeah. With the fireworks.
Yeah, there's another term for it, but I'm blanking out the name. But I'm watching this, and it's just reminding me. And then you looked at a couple days before the photo in front of the coffin for the clicks and the likes and the to generate the traffic. I'm just watching this whole thing, and I'm like, this just feels very wrong to me. And yet, anybody that questions it, people on the right are just same. It's like COVID all over again. Like the mask versus the non-mask wearers. Israel,
Yeah.
anti-Semite. They put you in these boxes, and it felt like such a grift. Like, all right, let's collect as much money as we can, to the point where it's Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, like somebody said.
Yeah. Well, and Candace Owens has intimated that she's got evidence that there's some, she calls them the grifting pastors. These guys that dress up and claim to be preaching Jesus, but they're actually figuring out how they can fill their pockets with money. Sort of the Kenneth Copeland model. Yeah, it was it was quite a spectacle. The way to plan and pull that together as quickly as they did, pretty challenging task, but they, I'd like to find out who did it. They must be one of the most incredibly talented people in the world.
And then they're already planning a documentary, and I saw a little trailer for it. It's him that day, throwing hats into the crowd, and then the video cuts as he's about to sit down, or as he's sitting down. It's already in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
wouldn't you think? And his close friends, the journalists that are now taken over, that are guest hosting, it's like they're just carving up the pie.
Yeah. It's some are hoping that TPUSA will remain a powerful political force. Maybe it will, but the fight for its soul is underway between the pro-Zionists and those who say, "Hey, we don't need to be held hostage by Israel." Let's call it more of a Christian-focused political effort. So, you could, with Christianity as the center of it, as opposed to this Judeo-Christian nonsense. The fact of the matter is, the core of Zionism is a heresy within Christianity, and we shouldn't give it any room whatsoever. In my view.
Don't you find it odd, Larry, though, that how his wife just has been propelled all of a sudden to superstar status as fast as is that weird to you?
No, it's just like it's what happened to Jackie Kennedy after Kennedy was assassinated. But let's see what she does. She's got 2 small children, reportedly is pregnant with a third. She's going to have to make a choice. Am I going to be a mother and care for these kids? Or am I going to become the CEO and the face and voice of TPUSA?
And then this 19-year-old kid. Have you seen this 19-year-old kid that they've been pushing out there?
I've heard about him. I've heard he's a disaster.
He was on a private plane, and he had interviewed Charlie probably 3 or 4 years ago, and now he's 19. Brylan Holland, I think his name is, and he's like, "Yeah, we're going on a 10-city tour," and like it's like they're pushing this kid now too to be the potential face for Turning Point, and he's a big pro-Israel kid.
Yeah. Well, that's why I mean this Israel's they're in desperate straits to try to salvage. In the past they've been able to bully their way through Congress and pay their way, and look, I used to consider myself pro-Zionist. Sad to say, no more. I'm a virulent anti-Zionist.
I want to go back to Gaza here in a second, but as we're talking about Charlie Kirk, the narrative now that's been formed or appears to be formed, because the government never lets anything go to waste, right? So Trump has talked about the enemy from within, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're putting this narrative of trans, one of them. You're seeing with Antifa, so it's like they know they can focus on the enemy within. So what do you think the narrative, if any, has been formed for the government to capitalize on this?
Well, what they're doing is it's a clear violation of by putting U.S. military personnel into cities without it being the National Guard at the request and orders of the state governor. It's a violation of federal law. It's a violation of posse comitatus. And I talked with Danny Davis about this yesterday as well. Trump clearly does not understand the difference between a military mindset and a law enforcement mindset. The military, when you train a soldier or a Marine or a sailor, they are not trained to de-escalate in the face of conflict. They are taught to escalate, to use maximum force, maximum violence. That's the military mindset. The law enforcement mindset is supposed to be one of de-escalation, and that you only use force when your life it faces immediate threat. You're threatened immediately with loss of life or grievous bodily harm. Those are the two sort of standards. So, as an example, if you're parked you're a cop, you're parked in a car in Baltimore, and you watch these two drug dealers come up on a corner. You see that they're carrying illegal narcotics. You see that they're now getting ready to sell it to somebody who drove in from a suburb to buy it. At that point, you do not have authority or the right to open fire and start killing everybody there. Yeah, they're involved with something illegal. So your first step is get out. Hey, you're under arrest. Now, at that point, if those drug dealers decide to try to pull a gun to shoot you, then you could use violence. If they choose to run away, you can't shoot them, and nor should you. But in the military, what they've done now with like these boats off the coast of Venezuela, just blowing them up. People haven't shot at Americans. They haven't shot at ships. They're allegedly carrying drugs, so there's no evidence offered to support that claim. We just kill them. So what Trump is doing is, look, I oppose Antifa with every fiber of my being. I think they're a corrupt, evil organization. But you go after them with law enforcement, not with military power. And what I mean by law enforcement, one, you follow the money. Find out who's funding this. Cut off the money. Go after the people on a RICO conspiracy, number one. Number two, make it clear that they can protest, but once they start using violence, and it's not just yelling words, but if they are throwing objects that can cause serious bodily harm, setting things on fire, then those people get arrested and they get prosecuted. That's the way it's supposed to work. This Trump's idea of putting military on every corner with armored vehicles. I've seen that before. That was called Bogota, Colombia in 2000, 2001, 2002. Active battles with both cartels and insurgents. And, so you got armed soldiers on every corner. What does that say about your society? Because I'd take you to St. Petersburg or Moscow, Russia, and you walk around on the city corners, and you know what you don't see? You don't see police. And you sure as hell don't see military guys standing there with automatic weapons pointing at different people in the crowd. So this is, this is one of those, it feels good. Yeah, we're going to show those Antifa people. And you can't rule out that part of this was, is it beyond the government to create something like Antifa, to provoke, to allow the government to take the kind of reaction that it's doing in order to gain control of society? I can't rule that out either.
Yeah, it's becoming normalized, and we're watching it in real time. I mean, we started with L.A. That was in June, I think, May or June.
Yeah.
And then it moved over to D.C., and then I've seen military in Chicago, Portland, Memphis, and I just saw the governor of Louisiana requested it. So what's next?
Now, it's one thing if you bring in National Guard, particularly that have been like a military police battalion. That's fine. At least they've got some training. And in fact, if it's National Guard and it's a military police battalion, the odds are a lot of them are already trained law enforcement. The guys that are the problems are the ones that have been in combat units that have been not taught to de-escalate, but to escalate force and to use greater force as opposed to less force. They have a tough time making that transition into law enforcement.
So where do you see this going?
I think we're headed towards losing more of our civil liberties. I think. We're going to get involved in at least two more wars. I mean, the war in Iran is going to kick off again with U.S. help, and we're going to bomb Venezuela. And again, that's illegal. Venezuela has not attacked us. People say, "Oh yeah, they're sending fentanyl." No, look at the actual countries that are making and sending the fentanyl: China, Mexico. I mean, if that's really what you're wanting to do, if you deal with the problem, go that route. I know how deadly fentanyl is because I have a 39-year-old nephew who died in my bathroom 60 feet from where I'm sitting from a fentanyl overdose.
I'm sorry to hear that, Larry. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, but it's just, so I know the threat and the cost. But what Trump is doing is it's extremely dangerous because instead of promoting an actual rule of law and a respect for law, he's engaging in some of the same sort of lawlessness that he's accusing Antifa of.
So where do you see the deployment of the National Guard, and where will that end? Or will it just keep expanding, in your view?
Well, I don't think it'll keep expanding. And what's the disengagement? What's the end game? How does this end? It's one thing to deploy National Guard, activate the National Guard in Washington, D.C. Great. But what is their mission? If their mission is simply to stand on a corner with a weapon, and I wonder if it's loaded or not, that's a whole nother issue. And then just to create a presence, that gets expensive, and it gets draining on that National Guard unit, because that means they're not doing what the other things they're supposed to be doing, such as training. What alarmed me about Trump's speech on Monday was when he claimed that the U.S. military, by going into these cities, going up against Antifa, would learn it would be good training for the military. The military it's a unit for attacking and destroying an enemy. These Antifa protesters, as much as I despise what they do and how they do it, to my knowledge, most are American citizens and have a right to protest. And unless they're committing acts of violence or damaging property, that they're entitled to be there without that kind of threat. Now, again, we've got Americans who got sort of a schizophrenic view on this, because when there's a group that believes that the government that exists is corrupt and has usurped the rights that God gave to you as an individual, then the belief that you can rise up and fight them, that was the foundation of America. From we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and then, the battle at Concord in Lexington, where the citizens rose up with their firearms and attacked the official military of the governing authority. And we celebrated. So I'm just saying, we want to have this black and white issue today that, Antifa bad and we're all good. And it's like, look, it's a little more complicated than that. Again, I personally reject the Antifa argument, because I think they're largely funded by globalists outside. So they're not just an indigenous group rising up to deal with local grievances. It's an organized movement, but you don't fight it with, it's not a military threat. It's something that law enforcement can handle. And Trump's not dealing with it that way. They've already demonstrated, Pam Bondi's been a bust. I mean, my God, she's been awful.
What were your thoughts with the meeting in Quantico then, with Hegseth? And you just referenced some of it, but yeah. What did you think of that whole thing? I mean, they could have done that on a Zoom call.
Well, yeah. I said it was a Peggy Lee moment. So Peggy Lee was a singer in the 50s and 60s, and she became famous for the song, "Is That All There Is?" It starts off talking about her house burning down when she's a little girl, singing, "Is that all there is? Is that all there is?" And that's what I thought after I saw this. I mean, it was like, really? I mean, Trump, you saw the setup. It's a little bit like yours, the American flag in the background, except they had the exact kind of flag that was stood behind George C. Scott when he performed the role of Patton in the movie Patton. So that was not a mistake. That was a deliberate staging, trying to create this aura of here's General Trump addressing his troops. Now, unlike the George C. Scott speech, which was pungent, pithy, funny, and short, God, Trump was like droned on, and he was, I try to, "Hey, Mike, I'm really glad to be here. It's a high energy event. This is really thrilling to do this today." I mean, he was so low energy and just monotone talking, like Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman out of that movie. And so, Eve Smith of Naked Capitalism speculated, and I think there may be something to this, that this was to create cover for actual discussions that are taking place between either or both by their CENTCOM, Southcom commanders about military operations that will be underway within the next 3 to 4 weeks in Venezuela and Iran. And so why would they bring all these other generals back? Well, if they had just brought those two in, independently or collectively, somebody in Washington would have seen, and in light of all the other, we got a, huge naval force parked off the coast of Venezuela. We got tankers and new forces building up in the Middle East. So that would have fueled the speculation, hey, we're getting ready to go. Doing it this way sort of took the heat off. But it was also telling that the number one, those generals and admirals, they sat on their hands. Nobody applauded, no cheers, no. But also, I frankly, I think they're a bunch of cowards. Nobody had the balls to stand up and say, no, look, you're the commander in chief. I respect the role of civilian command, but I think you are wrong. I think you're giving illegal orders. Therefore, I resign. That'd be the honorable thing to do. Hell, they're all sitting there, man, trying to figure out, how am I going to get paid next year? This is all about the money. It's not about honor, duty, honor, and country. And Hegseth was just, he was an embarrassment. It was typical. It reminded me of a child that likes to dress up as a doctor and play doctor. Goes through the motions, but not having the experience or the competence. And, I'm guilty of crude speech, but in that kind of setting, and particularly in the position that you are, his crude remarks at times were very inappropriate and demeaning of the position. So I think it was just another show. Perhaps there was this other purpose, intent, creating a pretext so Trump could do some planning. But it was, I called it a tour de farce of Trump's narcissism, because he spent the majority of the time talking about how great he was.
Yeah, he was at the memorial. He was talking about everything that he did, Charlie supported.
Yeah. There's a song that's sung among many Christian congregations, "How Great Thou Art." That's Trump, though. He's singing about himself.
The Venezuela part of it, what is I had Dave DeCamp on yesterday from antiwar.com, and we were talking about Venezuela. He was saying Somalia. I didn't realize how much the United States bombed Somalia.
Well, back, not lately, but yeah. I mean, we started in there 30 years ago.
He was saying that Trump's bombed Somalia more than any other president this year.
Yeah, that may be. I haven't seen the reports.
But I never hear about Somalia. But anyway, Venezuela. What in your view is what do we gain? What do I gain from this, Larry, as an American in Phoenix, Arizona, by bombing Venezuela?
Yeah, nothing. Trump, I think, wants to get control of the oil. There also another motivation is both Iran, Russia, and China have made or have close relations with Venezuela. I understand that one of the oil, significant portion of the oil field is actually owned by Russia, or Russia has a contract on it to, help to exploit the oil, get it out. China has been providing Venezuela with air defense systems. So this could be more of something as simple as the United States trying to reassert the Monroe Doctrine, that we're going to have full control over all the countries in our hemisphere. But a lot of those countries, like Venezuela, aren't cooperating. I think Tren de Aragua is in part a creation of the intelligence community that maybe it formed naturally and was funded and encouraged by the intelligence community, but there's clearly been U.S. intelligence efforts behind this to help create and magnify Tren de Aragua as a threat to the United States. So therefore, we've got to go crush it. Tren de Aragua has been created, I believe, as an excuse for invading and attacking Venezuela.
Even as far back as how they had them in those apartments in Colorado.
Oh yeah, this started in 2018 during Trump's first term, when Trump underwent and it was the intelligence, CIA was involved, State Department was involved, both covert and overt actions to try to dethrone Maduro and replace him at the time with Juan Guaido. Failed, but that was the plan.
I think this whole thing on the international front, it's like a big game of risk, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and you're the second person that said to me about Venezuela in terms of not allowing Russia and China to continue that relationship and prying them away from them.
Right. Yeah, all this is going to do, if if the U.S. proceeds with the bombing, it's going to enrage uh, the Colombians, the Brazilians. It's going to create some real unrest in Peru, Ecuador. So it'll be a big mistake. And then, we can bomb, but Venezuela's a big country, lots of mountains. I'm sure Maduro is taking steps to have a secure location where we can't reach him.
The last thing I want to talk to you about was, because we ended our last conversation with this note, but it was like a teaser, so we didn't get a chance to get into it. You had said you potentially saw a financial collapse coming.
Yeah. I mean, we are 126% debt to GDP.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. That's all. Um, there, Europe, I think this whole thing will get precipitated by Europe. They are increasingly agitating towards starting a war with Russia. France, in particular, is sort of taking the lead, and Russia's not withholding; they're punching back. So, well, it'll roll out of Europe, and then hit the United States. We keep getting mixed messages. We're told, man, the U.S. is doing great, and others are saying, no, listen, it's smoke and mirrors. But I think the financial side is something definitely will be play a major factor.
Do you envision the United States? How much longer can they keep supporting the proxies in Ukraine?
Oh well, we're going to continue. That's what's really alarming. On the one hand, Trump last week, when he put out that Truth Social piece saying that Ukraine was winning, Russia was losing, etc. But it wasn't attended at the time by anything concrete other than, yeah, we'll sell weapons to NATO, and NATO can then give them to Ukraine. Wall Street Journal reported yesterday that the Trump administration now is saying that it will provide intelligence to Ukraine so it can launch long-range missiles into Russia. Russians have made it very clear they're going to view that as an act of war. So if the U.S. does that, we could be at war with Russia. Quite foolish. It doesn't matter how much aid. Let's say we had unlimited weapons, unlimited Patriot missiles, unlimited planes and tanks. We just keep giving Ukraine whatever we want. Ukraine doesn't have the men to run it. That's the thing. That's what people keep missing. They lack the trained manpower, and the current dynamic is such that even if they go recruit 40,000 people tomorrow, those 40,000 people aren't going to have the minimal amount of training to conduct any military operation for at least 3 months. Meanwhile, Russia's got trained manpower that's in the pipeline and has continued to flow. Ukraine doesn't. So this war could, very well reach an end state toward the end of this year, is possible. If it extends over into next year, I know that Putin's coming under more pressure, not to get out of the war, but to, finish him off. He's viewed in some circles as too soft. And there are plenty of other people who are seen as much tougher, willing to step in and just literally destroy Ukraine and NATO if they need to.
Where can people find you, Larry?
Sonar21.com.
You're cranking out on Substack, man.
Hey, like the dairy farmer, milk the cow every day.
I appreciate you doing this. And for those that watch it on YouTube and Rumble, please, comment. I read all the comments. Subscribe, and it helps what I'm doing. Same on the audio as well. And then I put all my conversations up early for my Substack subscribers, paid subscribers. So if you want to support what I'm doing, you can do that on there. So, Larry, I always enjoy our conversations, and I look forward to the next one.
As do I, Michael. Thank you, man. Bye-bye.
Mic drop.